April 8th, regular meeting of the Harbor Commission to order. Can we get a roll call, please?
Yes, you may. Commissioner Abelman.
Present.
Commissioner Falk.
Here.
Welcome. Commissioner Carlson.
Here.
Commissioner Bauer.
I'm here.
And Commissioner Callahan.
Here.
For the record, Chair Curzon and Commissioner Kilroy are out, but we do have a quorum and we can conduct business.
I'd like to ask our new commissioner, Lisa Falk, to lead us in the pledge.
Okay. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right. We need to approve the order of agenda.
I'll move.
Okay.
I'll second.
Second.
I'll third.
Any objections? Motion carries. Blue folder items, do we have any?
No, we do not.
Yay. All right. Consent calendar. We need a motion to approve.
Motion to approve?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Excluded consent calendar items, we have none. Public participation on non-agenda items. This section is intended to provide members of the public with the opportunity to comment on any subject that does not appear on the agenda for action. The section is limited to 30 minutes. Each speaker will be afforded 3 minutes to address the commission. Each speaker will be permitted to speak only once. Written requests, if any, will be considered first under this section. Does anyone wish to speak? Mark Hanson.
Good evening, Commissioner, staff. Mark Hanson, King Harbor boater, and tonight staff commodore of King Harbor Yacht Club. I've been rushing today, so I haven't prepared this statement like I usually do, so I'm going to do this one off the cuff. I just want to acknowledge that King Harbor Yacht Club held our opening day ceremonies this Sunday, and before I forget, Port Royal Yacht Club will have theirs on Saturday, April 20th. That's always kind of a humorous thing that we do in opening day. You know, on the East Coast, they wait for the snow to melt so they can, and the ice to melt so they can go boating. You know, here we tell jokes about, you know, the only ice is in our glasses and our cocktails. We had a great opening day, very special that our new mayor, Jim Light, came and presented a proclamation, said a lot of nice things about the yacht club members and the boating community at large. We also had representatives from the offices of Supervisor Mitchell and Senator Ben Allen and Congressman Ted Lieu, and a proclamation read by the mayor from the assemblyman. So we had all the biggies were represented there. Had at least a couple commissioners, Commissioner Abelman, Commissioner Falk, Commissioner Carlson. I think we're all there. I hope I didn't miss anybody. Our fire chief, Pat Butler, and Fire Chief Isaac Yang were there. The Harbor Patrol, Baywatch, and police boat were wonderful. They all gathered in front of the club, and as our cannon went off to signal the opening of the season, their water cannons crisscrossed, being guided by Isaac Yang, who was on the phone to him, telling him exactly where to set up to make it look perfect. He's just absolutely wonderful, and lights and sirens and all that stuff. So very cool. So the West Coast is officially opening for boating here in King Harbor. But on an actual practical note, we do kick off the Thursday night twilight races at King Harbor Yacht Club. And so any of the public who's listening right now, we're often looking for crew. And so if you come down on a Thursday night about 5 o'clock, we can usually get you on a boat and turn you into a sailor. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark. Anyone else who wishes to speak on a non-agenda item? Mio, do we have any e-comments or emails from the public?
There are no e-comments and no Zoom participants.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, there are no public hearings. There are no items continued from the previous agendas. And now we're down to items for discussion prior to action. Mike Wasansky, our city manager, is here. I believe he's going to discuss discussion consideration of the fiscal year 2024-2025 budget. Welcome.
Welcome. Well, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to see you all. We're at that, it's hard to believe, but we're at that time of year again where we are getting ready to prepare and deliver to the city council our fiscal year budget for the year 24-25. That'll be due to the council in May, middle of May. What I've been trying to do the last couple of years is get to you all for an opportunity to provide input on the preparation of that budget before we deliver it to the council. So you've got a chance to provide early feedback and give me some food for thought as we prepare as staff the formal document. So I don't have much to present to you tonight. This is kind of our kickoff of the season. You're the first commission to have this opportunity. I'll, of course, be before you more formally in May and or June, depending on your calendars, with an opportunity for you to provide feedback on the delivered budget and then ask any questions you might have as to why we've prepared it the way we have. Always value your input. It's a very active commission, very helpful to staff. Really appreciate all the hard work. You are very busy and have been the last couple of years and will continue to be busy. If there's one thing I would provide as sort of an overall anecdote as we prepare the budget is the uplands and tidelands funds, while slowly improving from where we were during the COVID, are still remarkably tight. You might recall that we started the fiscal year, as in the current fiscal year, 23-24, with a structural imbalance, both in the tidelands and uplands fund areas. We improved the level of structural imbalance from 22-23, and we expect to improve it a bit more going into 24-25. So I hope to be formally balanced in the two funds next fiscal year. But I will say, with all of the capital project activity we've had, all the work that you and the staff have been doing with the amenities plan, Seaside Lagoon design, boat ramp discussions for pre-engineering, International Boardwalk pavers, replacing all the lights on the pier, replacing the sails on the pier, railings, skate park improvements, et cetera. We've had more capital work in the last fiscal year than I think we've had in the previous 10, not to mention the very expensive and long overdue harbor dredging project, which is currently underway. So we're spending money at a very high rate, particularly in the Tidelands Fund, which is a good thing because these projects are, as I said, long overdue and very necessary. But it's also a little bit of a scary thing. We don't have quite that cash balance that we used to have in reserve. So we're getting pretty tight. And I guess that's kind of the spirit of how I'll be preparing the budget, at least as it pertains to the waterfront going forward, is we've got to be careful and cautious about our spending there. And we have so many projects that are currently in the queue. It's unlikely that you'll see us recommend another slew of them next fiscal year. We've got a lot of work to carry out. It's very much active, and we're really excited about it. But it's going to limit, I think, the things we add to the to-do list here, at least in the upcoming fiscal year. If things go really well fiscally for us next year, I think we'll be able to start maybe expanding that capital improvement project list, but we're going to be pretty tight going into 24-25. That said, anything that you all would like to share with me today, anything you think I should be thinking about, Greg should be thinking about, please share it. I'm all ears. There's no question that I'm not willing to try to answer for you, and all thoughts are good thoughts for me right now.
I'd like to ask our waterfront director, shall we organize being told that we're not going to get any new toys, shall we?
Well, maybe.
Shall we go ahead and organize a subcommittee to submit a letter to city council?
You could. I think at this point, though, this is really just feedback for Mike to make considerations for the budget. Maybe that letter would be better served when we've got a budget in front of us.
Okay.
Yeah, you'll probably want to provide a formal recommendation to council as it pertains to the delivered document. But for now, it's just ideas and concepts.
Okay.
What should we be thinking about? Is there any particular project we're missing in the queue that's a little bit more overdue than we'd like? I mean, I've got some idea of the things that I know the commission's looking forward to longer term. I know there's some projects we're really excited about seeing executed here in the shorter term. So And in fact, we've got maybe some good news coming on the International Boardwalk Paver Stone project. So there's some good things going on, but tonight's really just general input. I don't need formal motions tonight. Just what are your thoughts? What should we be considering as we put this thing together?
All right. Anybody else? Roger?
So I've got two. First one is kind of a philosophical question. We have a couple million set aside for Moonstone Park that's been sitting there for a long time for a lot of reasons. And it's not making it to the top of the priority list. And there's a lot of other projects. You know, if you really showed me the list of all the projects we have and everything the amenities plan, there might still be one or two or five other things. Unfortunately, I might pick over Moonstone. But it's sort of a philosophical question. What would it take to break that loose? Is it more staff in his department?
Yeah.
Okay, can we get that then?
Yeah, so two things. Yeah, the
I
answer
knew
is-
I was asking you a leading question. I knew what the answer was.
No, the answer is yes. Yeah, you're on to that. It's bandwidth really for the most part. But I would say at this point now, it's not just bandwidth, it's probably making sure we've got the fund balance we need to begin to execute and deliver all the projects that are on the list right now. So we need to get through what's currently in the works. We've got to complete and close the dredging project, which under our permit should be done by July 15th, as I recall. That's close to $4 million in total expenditure. We've got the Seaside Lagoon design project, which you're all very active in and know it's on its course. We've got to go out and identify the pre-engineer to help us prepare the conceptual designs and the egress, ingress, and parking studies and all the things that are required for the execution of the boat launch ramp project. That's an uplands expense, which is going to be tight as we go forward. We're delivering the Paver Stone project, hopefully in the next, hope to award contract here this month and hopefully deliver and execute that by this fall. That's a big number. That's going to be $1.5 million probably, all said and done. We've got the parking structure repair project. We're close on plans and specifications for that effort. Should have those, I think, in the next month or two out to bid and hopefully awarding bid this summer, executing next fiscal year. That's a $2.5+ million project, depending on final bidding. We've got the parking lot project that you might recall. We're trying to get rid of the mast arm there, get rid of the security operation that we have, go to pay by space program like we do in the pier, which should save us money operationally and generate more revenue, I think, long term. That's going to be desperately needed revenue for us. But that project, while it seems very easy, has ADA implications, has path of travel implications, has technological installation issues. So that takes time and energy to focus on. Greg constantly hears me hammering on, where are we at with that? That one saves us money. So we've got a lot in the queue, and I feel like realistically to tell you, I'd love to be able to say we could start the design effort on Moonstone, but I think I'd be telling you something that we won't be able to execute, and that's the issue. And the only way to really do more would be to have more bodies in the department, but right now with our level of revenue versus expenditure, I would not feel comfortable recommending that to council. I'll tell you though, we've got 3 new leases that are online. A little bit of improvement in the parking revenue side at Mold D, continued leasing up in Pier Plaza, which we're seeing massive increases in over the last year over year. We'll get there. We just need a little more time to prime the pump.
You might think about more creative ways to get more heads, interns.
That's a good thought.
Other stuff like that.
Yeah,
Somebody on
I like
loan
that
from the
idea.
university.
Yep.
I've had to do this in business a lot. There are people out there who are a little less expensive and might work, just for the summer on a project and still help out, and then turn into a good full-time employee down the road. Just something to think about.
Yeah, it's a great thought.
The second one I'd been talking to Greg about a data buoy. Cal State University Long Beach does nearshore studies of tagged sea life, and they have acoustic receivers. And to get the data, you go out, you put a diver in the water, they pick up the receiver, they download the data, they put the buoy back, and they get out there, every month or two or whatever it is, and sometimes a storm takes the thing away. Some cities are starting to put in, some cities in their network are putting in buoys that float on the surface and have a cell phone in them, and then you get live science. And they are potentially part of a future educational facility here. So they're looking around to see who's willing to sponsor a buoy. They're $25,000. I gave Greg an invoice for one, so that's one toy I'd throw on the wish list for Redondo.
Yeah, that's an idea that is in the more affordable.
Yeah, and it ain't millions of dollars. So
Yeah.
Thank you, that's
I
all.
like the
Ken.
idea. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great thoughts.
Tom, do you have anything?
No, I mean, some low-hanging fruit stuff that would cost less, especially if we could get volunteers. But I love the idea of like new murals or reworking down there, new artwork down there, basically. I think it's just small stuff, but I get what you're to the major stuff where kind of the pipeline's full at this point, but.
With really good stuff too. I mean, and things that I think we're all excited about. But that's great. We did have we had a little bit of a public-private partnership art project there on the temp wall in front of the old Fun Factory space. We did that with the local merchants down there and an artist. Cost us very little money. Of course, we got the skate park mural coming soon. We're working on a artistic agreement there for that installation, so that's exciting.
As well.
Gatewave's coming. We're working through some easement issues with the county there, but yeah, we've got some, public art's a
Yeah.
easy and really cool way to see improvement. So yeah, we'll keep it that for sure.
Okay.
Anything else?
No. I mean, I do have the one thing that's kind of thing going on the side, which is electric car chargers. I know you're working with Southern California Edison, and I can work on the side on that. But to me, I mean, I know some of the business owners down there would love to see even free, like in Hermosa, there's free level 2 chargers, which don't cost the city much, but bring people in and
Yeah,
it'd be nice.
we're evolving on that. You were an early suggester on that. We looked into it. We worked hard with Edison. We actually put in a program funding request for them. We had a great concept there in the surface lot there at the end of the bike path. And unfortunately, just with their bandwidth, they didn't fund us this go round, but we have turned our attention now to using what funds we have citywide to see if there are locations the council wants to support. In fact, we'll have a discussion item back on that, I think, in the next month. So we kind of had to pivot from the grant concept to something that we could build ourselves, and we are working on that. But we continue to look for any kind of funding source that will support that effort. And I know the waterfront is a great location for that at some point.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Falk. Aaron?
Yeah, I've got nothing. I think you're doing a fine job.
Thank you so much for coming.
you.
We know
Well-
you have a busy schedule.
All good. No, we really appreciate the input, and we'll be back here more formally when we have the document delivered. And in between now and then, if there are any other ideas you think of, don't hesitate to reach out to Greg or myself, and we'll do what we can to try to get it funded. But thanks again for all your hard work.
And thank you for all you're doing. That's great stuff.
Just 1 foot at a time. We're
Yeah.
just excited. Lots of good stuff.
Thank
So,
you.
Okay, thank you.
Good night.
Thanks, Mike.
Okay. I guess I should have asked the audience if
public
they had any
comment, yeah.
questions. Oh, well.
He'll be back.
He'll be back. Quarterly public safety report. Oh, Mark?
Public participation, budget item.
Yeah.
Oh,
Let's do it.
yes. Okay.
City manager, if you're listening.
Yeah, sorry. I let you go before we were finished.
Sorry. Mark Hansen, King Harbor Boater. Of course, I served a year on the Harbor Amenities Working Group, and as I think about, what would I be concerned about on the budget, some of our stuff has easily identifiable, funding. Commissioner Carlson, mentioned that, we have the funding through Chevron. Originally it was 2.7 million. We spent 300, so we have 2.4 left on that one. Boat ramp, we know, Division of Boating Waterways, very interested in funding that. They would also be a potential source for improvements to the hand launch and dinghy docking, guest docking. The one that really jumps out at me is the Seaside Lagoon. We got $10 million from the state, and people have just loosely opined if we wanted to do something really cool there, it'd probably cost about 3 times that, $30 million. We are moving along at a pretty good clip at talking to the public about that property. Some of the concerns I have, and I've probably shared this with some of you, is that when we're engaging the public, I feel like it's kind of boring, okay, to pick a candid word. We're asking them, hey, how much grass do you want? How much sand do you want? It's an okay question, but it's not a very exciting question. We're asking which of 3 architectures you want for the building. They don't even know what we're gonna do with the building, so it's a question to be asked, but it's a boring question, okay? I went back and reviewed all my notes from the Harbor Amenities Working Group, and I pulled out, things that sound a little more exciting. I don't know if they're the things that should be there, but, people mentioned things like a standing wave pool to teach surfing, a traveling wave for little kids. I heard scuba lessons, which was interesting, and model sailboats. Again, I don't know if those are the ones that should be there, but what I can tell you is I got a lot more excited reaction from people when I brought those up than the things we were bringing up. And of course, a big deal was we wanted to figure out what to do with this thing 365 days a year instead of the current 90. Right now, we're really not answering that question. As I listen to consultants, they would be telling the public, well, we're going to have a programmable and reconfigurable space, to hold events. Again, I'm kind of going whoop-de-doo. The reason I bring this up under this budget is that our ability to do exciting stuff is gonna come down to money. If we only have $10 million, maybe we can only do the boring things we're talking about right now. We'll clean it up a little. We'll have a water feature for 90 days and we'll rent it out for parties the rest of the time. And we really haven't moved forward very much. If we had 30 million, now maybe everybody would be more receptive to what exciting, fun things, could we do in there, the ones I mentioned or anything else the public dreams up. So I'd encourage us to really roll up our sleeves and see if we can locate some more funding so we can kind of do this once in a lifetime, reconfigure that property. Thanks so much.
Anyone else have a comment? All right. Thank you. You're released again.
Mike.
Okay, we're on to the quarterly public, there were no e-comments.
No e-comments.
Okay.
Can I make a comment on Mark's comment, though? Just to ask Greg. Greg, is there funding efforts to garner more funding for the, well, of course, I just slam dunk, but yeah, because I think
we're very well aware that 10 million is not going to really stretch too far. So
Right.
we're constantly looking for more opportunities to seek more funding.
Okay.
Okay, quarterly public safety report. You're up.
Dun, dun.
Thank you. So each quarter, fire department, police department typically come and just do a report on statistics, what they're seeing out there, what they're responding to. Tonight, we have the fire department. Jason May is going to come up and provide that report. The police department couldn't be here tonight, but they've committed to next month. So we'll do this a little split this time.
Okay.
Turn it over to Jason now. Thanks for being here.
Good evening, Commissioners. Division Chief Jason May. I'm our Emergency Operations Chief, and I'm also a Deputy Harbor Master. So tonight, I'm going to be presenting our stats, maybe some small changes there. City Manager Mike Wazanski is a hard act to follow, so please don't hold me accountable to his standard. I'm just playing the bush down. Yeah, that'd be great. I'm not going to speak directly or at length to any of the stats. I'm sure if you had a chance to review the information, you'll bring those up to me. As I kind of walk through them, we'll just bring up the 2024 stats, Q1.
There we go.
You'll notice in the report that was filed, we changed how we track our data about a year ago. And so we're going into year 2 of new data and how we collect it. And what we bifurcated it into is 911 calls and then call-ins to the station or channel 16 ways of generating that data. And I'll give you a little asterisk behind the January, February, and March data. We did compile this the very last week in March, so there are a couple days missing from March, so the stats aren't complete. But I thought you'd enjoy seeing kind of what's happened as we kick off the new year in comparison to last year, because really these are the only two in a comparable format as you look at them. So Gannett, looking through our categories, the biggest changes you'll see from last year is the fire response and Bell's response in that 911 category has gone down dramatically. Based on direction from this group, we removed our Harbor Patrol members from our fire assignments in all parts of Redondo Beach. They're now only deployed when we have a greater alarm fire, meaning a significant working incident across the city. So a second alarm fire or greater is the only time those resources will be used as a firefighting force, even though they are staffed with firefighters. So there has been a decrease in that category in this quarter. That was done in the third quarter last year based on direction from you all. And so you'll see that as a slight decrease in their stats. We've seen an increase in the escort and towing. I think our inclement weather, which we experienced this winter, which I'll speak in as kind of my summation notes at the end. We've seen a lot of tough weather this year, so that's going to result in an increase in our tows. And then a significant increase in the public assist category at the very bottom. And I'll give, again, our foul weather credit there, where we've seen a significant increase from what we've seen last year. Overall, year on year, the total amount of action that our fire harbor patrol is seeing has gone down by about 11%. And most of that is probably those fire alarm responses or fire responses, where they're not going on every first alarm. They're not part of our initial deployment to a structure fire across the city. They're only going to those greater alarm fires. And then everything else, the categories do change over time and how we allocate those. But just basically 11% decrease year on year from the year before. What will be interesting was when we get into the next year, the year after that, we'll really have a really good way of collecting and looking at our data. And I'll touch on our winter storm response. I know that was a major concern for this body as we entered into a potentially a El Nino winter, both messaging the public, kind of what our response would look like if we did have significant winter storms, which we have. And I'll say that I'm not going to say what I want to say, which is we've had a lot of foul weather this winter, but our alignment of factors haven't come in. We have large surf, high winds, and rain all at the same time. We've had each one of those things independently, but we haven't had the amalgamation. We had massive surf in late December, but almost no wind, which is kind of a first for me. We've had a lot of rainstorms, but they haven't had a lot of high winds associated with them. And so we've been very fortunate with this El Nino winter that we've had bad weather, but the factors haven't aligned to make a cataclysmic event for our harbor patrol. The other interesting factor is having the dredging operation underway, at least for the first third of dredging, coordinating with them, and then also having a game plan in place if we did have inclement weather and dredging with that large barge inside our harbor. We have upstaffed or added additional personnel to our harbor patrol 5 times this winter. So when we have that foul weather winter and they're getting out and dealing with luffing sails, bilge pumps that aren't working, people that haven't maintained their boats, that we have the personnel on board that are able to do that, especially in high winds and chop in our harbor. Another point I'll touch on in terms of harbor activity, we've had 3 boats sink because their bilge pumps failed and they did have taking on water. And we've also removed 2 of the abandoned vessels. Very recently, April 1st, the 2 abandoned vessels in our harbor were finally removed and are now no longer blighting kind of the view down there. So they've been removed from the harbor. Just so you know, that's a very lengthy process, especially with some of the vessels that aren't registered, specifically in the state, or aren't registered at all. But we do have to go through a lien process to be able to dispose of those vessels. But we've disposed of 2 of them already this winter. I'll touch on a relative point that we had yesterday. Yesterday, there was a small diesel spill. 20 to 30 gallons of diesel was spilled in Basin 1 off of J-Dock. And it was a very relevant drill for us. We did get the booms out. It was condensed. We did notify Cal Office of Emergency Services, Department of Fish and Game, the Coast Guard that all responds and made sure that the vessel owner was responsible for remediating those that diesel fuel that was spilled into the harbor itself. That issue is ongoing. They're still working with the remediation off the rocks where that fuel had collected. But for the most part, the free-floating fuel has been absorbed by absorbent materials and cased in by booms, which we borrowed from the Chevron operation down there. It was very relevant for our harbor patrol because the previous week, I had attended a drill at Chevron for a large oil spill off of their refinery product and kind of walking through what their process looks like. And it was nice to come back here and have us use a small spill, but also using the agencies that all coordinate the remediation for that. Our harbor patrol also attended last week a air-sea disaster drill. We are part of the air-sea disaster response both for LAX and we're the first responders for Torrance Airport. And that also involves fuel spills. So we got some taste and training and then got to execute again on Sunday with opening day and a small diesel fuel spill. Last but not least, I heard you mentioning our white shark tracker buoy that's off of Topaz Street. Dr. Lowe has invited our personnel to attend the Shark Symposium, which Long Beach State is hosting at the latter part of this month. We'll be attending and looking at the data that they've collected from the buoy that's outside our harbor and Will Rogers, and I forget where the other one is, maybe off Santa Monica. So it was nice to get an invite from that staff at Cal State Long Beach to work with the data that they're learning and then also have best practices. We do have another large fish inside our harbor. So. Those are kind of my summary of notes for you this evening regarding the stats for Harbor Patrol. Are there any questions about what's going on in the harbor?
Not really. I will be interested to see what happens when we get into the summer months, how the totals move.
Yeah, you know what stood out to me was actually, and I know swimming in the harbor has become more of an issue, but as we're dredging and the sandbar's disappearing to see if that's as much of an issue it has been in the past, or it might be more of an issue. And then also we had people swimming in the harbor in the winter months, which is really cold, as you all know. So
Yeah,
yeah, I'm sure those stats will peak as we head into the summer.
just add alcohol. Okay, shall we start with, Roger, do you have any comments?
Sure. Yeah, a couple. On abandoned boats, how does that start? Like, during one day with a heavy surge, the boat next to me got loose. And I tied it up by the first piece of rope I saw. And I told the marina office, somebody should check on this and tie it up better. And it's still tied up with the piece of clothesline I used. Do I own that boat now?
No. Well, you could, I don't know. The marina managers, when they're in slips, is a primary point of contact for managing those abandoned vessels. So I would have to delegate to Director Kapovich for how that process works on that end. The vessels we're primarily charged with working with the Waterfront and Economic Development Department are the vessels that come in the middle of the night, drop an anchor somewhere, or tie up to one of the moorings illegally, and then we have to go through that lien process to work on removing them. A vessel can be legally anchored in our harbor for 72 hours with a permit from Harbor Patrol, but the problem we have is people don't want to pay their slip fees, maintain their vessel, and they'll just sail in the middle of the night, disappear, and nobody knows who owns it or where it comes from or any of that. So that's kind of our end of management, but the marina managers are charged with abandoned vessels in their slips. And I believe Basin 3 just got rid of several abandoned vessels in their.
All right, next time I'll drop the anchor. On your list, you've got vessel registration. How does that work? Can you enforce registrations or look at them at all? Or is that just something you deal with, in addition to rules of the road or some other issue you're already working with a boater on?
Correct. So typically when they do the slip inspection for putting a boat in, they'll make sure it's registered to the state of California, that it's registered to the owner, just with the initial occupant or when they occupy a slip. Or if they have a vessel accident, they'll also run the registration for both vessels, but they're typically not walking the docks and checking registration on vessels.
What about when a vessel's moving and driving past you? Are you checking for?
Not necessarily. Not there, unless it's just like a police officer that's driving down the road, unless there's a reason to run the license plate, they're probably not gonna run the registration. They are able to, though.
What if you saw a boat driving past you with a 2013 sticker on it?
That would be a reason to run the registration.
Okay.
So that is something I could bring to the attention of our personnel more acutely. I think that element of enforcement has kind of fallen on the less vigorous side, so I think there'd be an opportunity to do that.
I happened to walk all the docks today. Guess what percentage of boats have registrations older than 2023?
Older than 2023, I would say over 50%.
So 80% had 2023 or 2025. 20% had older.
That's better than what I would have anticipated.
Okay.
So
Cool. The last one I have is the boater's license. It's 60 and under now. Would you ever put that on this list, or?
that is something we should add to this list as part of our just enforcement, especially if people are speeding in the main channel, creating a wake in the main channel. We could add that as a category.
I heard it was more gallons of diesel than 20 or 30. I heard it was about 10 times that, but you hear things around the docks. Is that guy's boat registered? Does he have a boater's license?
I can't answer that question. But that is a point we should be more diligent about. Typically, like I said, if there's an interaction between Harbor Patrol and the boaters, they would run the registration, but I can't say that's 100% of the time.
And these are not questions I'm throwing at you. These are questions where I wish the Harbor Patrol was what it used to be and was a full force, and we had a full-time dedicated harbor master. Fire chief is a full-time job, but I think harbor master is too. In Long Beach, they had a fuel issue and they had a fire at the gas dock, and it was pretty awful. People died. And now we see a similar, issue. I wish there were more inspections of boats than just incoming and that's it. And I don't know where that goes. I know you guys don't have the manpower for it, But, I wish there were, I think of stuff like, I wish there was a yearly inspection that checked the registration, checked the bilge pump, checked the fire. You guys check fire department checks fire suppression systems in buildings and restaurants all over. There's fire suppression systems on big boats. Do you check those? So, maybe you put a sticker on a boat saying this thing's been inspected and it can go to the gas dock. I know we're a long, long way from that in this harbor, but
Yeah, I think
this harbor gets
enforcement
busier.
of walking the docks is totally appropriate. I don't disagree with you. Just to speak to your point about the fuel fire in Long Beach, and there's actually an equally as dramatic fire in Northern California at a fuel dock. Based on those incidents, we did review our safety procedures at our fuel dock, and then kind of upgraded and reviewed our response to waterborne fires. So, we're lucky that we have a small recreational harbor that has both water access and land access, and our fire department is very well equipped to fight a fuel fire. So, and the harbor patrol is equally well versed in that. So
Great. Okay. Thanks.
that we did see that same, and it set off alarms in our house as well.
Great. Thank you.
Just one quick question. We had one fire in March, right? That you responded to. Was just a small minor?
It was a land-based fire,
land-based fire,
so
okay.
I don't have it off the tip of my tongue. 'Cause
Okay.
it's about 1% of our call volume, but I don't know what that particular one was in March. So it was a greater alarm fire. So something where there was a working structure fire and people were losing significant property.
Got it. All right, thank you.
Speaking to Commissioner Carlson's concern about registered boats, I agree, because if somebody's let their registration lapse, they're letting their maintenance lapse, they probably aren't paying their slip fees, and those are the ones that are going to end up either sinking or being abandoned. So it might be in our best interest to have those notified and checked to make sure that they're still being looked after.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
So I think Harbor Patrol personnel obviously are dealing with a lot of different
Sure.
responsibilities. It's going to be a partnership between us and the marina managers
Yeah,
and
and-
confirming. So, and that's something that we continue to need to foster a better relationship with the marina managers and making sure that they have.
And you guys
boats.
don't have a ticket book. You can't write citations. So I'll ask the police next month
Yeah.
what they think.
Yeah.
Or I'll stop paying my car registration.
Yeah. Anything we do with each marina has to do with the marina managers. Vessels out on the water or moving through the harbor, that's where we are primarily focused. But I hear exactly what you're saying about checking those registrations and making sure people are doing their due diligence on maintaining their vessels.
Thanks.
Commissioner Falk?
I watched them respond yesterday. It was very impressive. Thank you.
Of course. Great crew.
Commissioner Abelman?
I'm just curious to know what consists of public assist?
That's kind of a catch-all for almost anything. So that if it doesn't fit in all the other boxes and somebody calls and asks for assistance, it falls into the public assist box.
Okay.
So that could be, name it. Fill in the blank if it's not in those other categories there. So one of the challenges we have with data collection, specifically for the Harbor Patrol, is as a fire department, we use a national standard for reporting any incidents that we respond to, and Harbor Patrol uses that same format. It's not custom necessarily designed to meet all their things. So it could be something as helping, fix wiring on a dock to secure vessels, anything that doesn't fit in those other boxes up there.
Any other questions? Do we have any e-comments? Anybody in the queue?
No one in Zoom as well.
All right, well, thank you. Oh, Mark, public comment? Mark? No? Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Commissioner.
We always look forward to this.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your time. We'll look at the vessel registrations.
Great, thank you.
And it's,
All right, discussion and consideration of the city strategic plan.
Yes. Thank you. So each year, actually every 6 months, the city council establishes a new set of goals to direct staff on what they want accomplished in that 6-month period. Last year, they had quite the list, and it turned into the year strategic plan. So we're coming up on a year. We've made a lot of headway on a lot of projects. And each time that they go through this exercise to establish a new list, I come before you to ask of your ideas of what you think could be included on that list. And I ask because the process to create the strategic plan is a lot less formal than this commission meeting or a city council meeting. It's usually conducted just at the library. It is open to the public, anybody can show up, but it's more of a dialogue between staff and city council. And a lot of times they end up asking staff, what do you think? And I want to make sure that I'm aligned with you. So, we've got quite a bit, as City Manager Wazanski indicated, on our docket at this point. We've got outreach for the Waterfront Education Center. I think that's going to end up on the strategic plan this year. That's just formally, getting interest in the site, getting people that would want to partner with the city to create some kind of nonprofit situation over there. Obviously, Seaside Lagoon is a 5-year contract. That's going to appear on every strategic plan and likely just want to make headway on that. That'll be on there. Same with the boat launch. That's going to be on there. We're doing the dredging now, so that'll be finished. But what's next? The next is the breakwater repair, right? We're doing the dredging, which has been long needed for a very, very long time, but it's actually making it so that the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers can actually access the breakwater to do the necessary repairs. That'll be on the strategic plan. We've got the Harbor Commission purview. You guys saw that, I think was it last month or 2 months ago? We took it to Planning Commission last month. We're taking it to City Council next week. And likely I don't want to suppose, but if they tell us to pursue a text amendment, that will end up on the strategic plan to change your purview to expand it. We've also got the Fun Factory leasing strategy. What do we want to do with that? Obviously, right now it's a vacant building. 30,000 square feet is a lot of leasable space. It's a lot of income that we could be getting, but it's vacant for a reason right now. It's vacant because we need access to the parking structure that it sits adjacent to do seismic upgrades. That's happening right now. But it is going to remain vacant for the next year to year and a half. But that doesn't mean we should just stop and wait for that. We should get a strategy around what we want that space to look like and how we accomplish that. I expect that to show up on the strategic plan. And then, of course, we've got our city harbor department. We're comparing the way our harbor master and, chief of fire and public works and my office with waterfront, how it is organized in other cities. And maybe we can look to improve efficiency in that manner. I expect that to be on the docket. And then, of course, while I am the waterfront director, I'm also the economic development director. So I do have to look at the other areas of the city, believe it or not. And we've got a lot of ACAP, Artesia and Aviation Corridor Plan, text amendments and adjustments that we're going to be looking into and expect those to appear on the strategic plan. So, and I haven't even noted some of the capital improvement projects that aren't necessarily strategic plan items. They're just things that we'll be doing. So with an understanding of everything that I expect to be on the strategic plan, is there anything that you guys think should be included? If you have some ideas, I think we should formulate such in a letter that we then send to City Council. I'm very proud to say that we were the only commission last year to produce a letter. And I'll say, the Harbor Commission purview, the Harbor Commission department model items were both included, and they were born in this session last year. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to just suggestions, ideas. What do you guys think we should be doing moving forward?
Roger, you want to start?
Well, I'll add to what you just said, and for the new commissioners, at least one of us has tried to go to these sessions, and we'll be the only commission there, maybe one other.
Sure.
And it really helps to show that, we give a damn to show up, and, also it helps us get what we want, explain what we want. And you also learn how the city budget works, which, as a resident is kind of nice. So when these meetings come up, they're usually an afternoon and Wednesday. The budget's pretty much set, but these will be a couple extra add-ons. They'll have some slush money, and here's the wish list and who's in and who's out. And, by us being there, we've gotten a lot of stuff. Unfortunately, we've probably gotten more stuff than we can bite off in 1 year.
Yeah.
So the thing I would add would be, again, more staff somehow, more help for your office or whatever office, more ways to get this done. And then as a resident of North Redondo, I wish you'd stop messing around with the harbor and go work on Artesia.
Noted.
That's it, yeah. So really nothing to add to this list.
Mr. Bauer,
Staff, I heard staff, yeah. Yeah.
I know what you're going to add.
What am I going to add?
Chargers.
Well, we already talked about electric chargers, and Mike's got that, I guess, on his list. But yeah, I
You
love
planted
it.
the seed with the budget talk and then,
You also have the Artesia and the aviation corridor, but does PCH fit into that at all? Some of that areas could.
I mean, it does. It doesn't fit into that specific document. The beauty of that document, the Artesian Aviation Corridor Area Plan, is that it's much like the amenities plan. It was a lot of work. It took a few years to get it approved, and it outlined all of these projects and all of these goals, and now we're in execution mode, right? So we're just, I think, maybe this time last year, we adopted 6 text amendments to kind of make establishing some preferred uses out there a little bit easier. We relaxed parking standards. We did some of these things that takes time to amend the code. It's got to go to Planning Commission, City Council, sometimes coastal, but worthwhile, right? I can tell you vacancies decreased out there, but what we're really after is slow redevelopment, and that hasn't taken hold yet. And I think when the general plan amendment comes through, that's, in my opinion, the most critical change that's going to happen out there. The general plan dictates one development standard in particular, and it limits the floor area ratio to 0.6 right now. That doesn't do much in terms of redevelopment from as much as land costs and how much building area you can fit on there. If the general plan is adopted, that increases to 1.5. All of a sudden, projects start to pencil for the developer, right? So a lot of work still to do, but again, these are kind of like the amenities plan projects that staff's just attacking one by one.
No, that makes sense. And if it improves Rogers' neighborhood.
Yeah, and it could be one of those things where it might not be now, but PCH gets a similar document that then we can tackle.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with the harbor, of course, but I'm just kind of curious.
Yeah.
My question is, can we get the sea bass
Oh, yeah.
right up to the top again?
Yeah,
I mean,
actually, we
it's
made some
stagnating.
really, really good headway.
Have we?
Yeah.
You wish. You should
Yeah.
get a lottery ticket.
We're working enthusiastically with the fire department to locate the sea bass at the Harbor Patrol docks.
Yay.
Details aren't really ready to be published in a public hearing, but that's the path that we're going, which is the path of least resistance in terms of what would be needed to establish it.
Right.
You are a part of the subcommittee. The location that didn't work out, there was an alternative location. It would have required repairs to a dock, which is not only costly, but time consuming before we could do it. I think we're going to end up in an amenable place here.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay. Commissioner Falk, do you have anything? Commissioner Abelman?
I just have a question. I'm not sure if it's appropriate here or not, but the space that's used to be the Funland space, you mentioned that nothing's going to be happening for a year and a half. Is there anything we can do in the meantime? Not, like those Halloween stores that just sort of take over vacant places. I'm not saying we want a Halloween store
Right.
there, but is there some sort of some way we can get some sort of revenue out of that spot? Because it's just,
Unfortunately, no. It's got to remain empty so that our public works crews can use it as accessible space to make the repairs to the structure that sit right next to it. So, no. But what we can do is we can get our act together so that when it is available, we know exactly what we need to do.
then let's do that.
I think that's a splendid idea.
Yeah.
It is pretty spooky. Halloween would be good.
Halloween would
Yeah,
be great.
It will be tough to rent, and we'll have to do legwork on it because it's got, a small doorway and a big cave behind it. It's hard to figure out what wants to go in there.
A rave,
Yeah, raves.
Well, there's already the old Brixton where you could do that.
Parking revenue.
Okay, if there's no more comments, do we have any e-comments?
No e-comments. no.
Anybody in the queue?
No.
No. Anybody from public that would like to address us?
Commissioner, staff, Mark Hanson, King Harbor boater. A couple things on the strategic plan. I was quickly researching back here, and I wanted to point out to you, your last recommendation to the city council did include the issue on getting money for the Seaside Lagoon. And so with that in mind, I just wanted to recommend you all get your pause on your last recommendations and review that to see which things you've already typed, and you can just cut and paste your recommendations. On the Planning Commission review of the question of the Harbor Commission preview expansion, I was trying to watch that, but we were having a family emergency. I think I kind of got the gist of it, but that might be something if the waterfront director so chose, he might give you a little sense of what happened there in case you guys also didn't get to watch it in detail. On the subject of the Harbor Department, when I read what staff provided, it felt just maybe a touch short of what I've heard harbor commissioners say, which is you guys really want a separate harbor department with a separate harbor director. So you might take a look at that language and see if you just want to say that a touch more firm than maybe what we've got typed so far. And finally, on the south seawall, your last recommendation included explore the feasibility of extending the south seawall with the Army Corps of Engineers and others as required. Your rationale was Army Corps of Engineers studies show wave and surge action on Mole C and D could be significantly reduced by extending the south seawall, and you provided a couple figures. With the investment in Mole C and D infrastructure, extension of the seawall would reduce the risk of storm activity damaging the new amenities. Also, the calming effect of the extension would reduce shutdown times of the new boat ramp and make it safer to use. And you included Army Corps drawings, one of showing an extension of the breakwater, and another one direct quote on their analysis. One good kind of counterpoint to this that Commissioner Carlson logically brought up was, well, we want to watch out for the law of unintended consequences. If when we extend it, we make it narrower, what kind of additional tidal surge would we get? That was just an absolutely great.
Yeah, or collisions.
Yeah. So, and I was looking at the drawing again, I said, and it does narrow it in the way they depicted it. Doesn't narrow it a bunch, but this is the beauty of that Bose-Einstein modeling that they have at the Army Corps. They can answer all those questions for us. So I'd say at the very least, maybe a strong recommendation that we put in at least enough in the budget to have them do that kind of analysis and tell us, is this still a good idea or a bad idea? Final 8 seconds is I back up Roger. Try to get one of two of you in there. It makes a big deal when they have questions and they have you guys there to get clarifications. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. All right. I guess that's the end of that topic, and we can move on to items from.
Well, I would say if you so choose, what I heard, I just want to summarize what I heard.
Okay.
I heard Seaside Lagoon funding, continue to seek funding for that project.
Yes.
I heard increased staffing. I heard emphasis on the Fun Factory kind of leasing strategy, getting our act together there. Mm-hmm. And then what we heard from Mark was the breakwater extension analysis. If you guys want to include that as well. And then if we've got an agreement on these added items, maybe we could nominate somebody to work with me to draft the letter.
I'll do it.
You want to do
I'll
it?
help you.
All right.
Perfect.
I'll do most of the work.
I love it when we have volunteers.
Happy to review with you, right?
Okay.
No, we'll talk.
Thank
I'll
you.
volunteer as well.
Okay,
if I may.
great. Two's better than one.
Yeah, I've helped write these things in the
Sure.
past, so I have last year's
Yeah.
letter, and we can look and see if there's anything missed.
Yeah.
So, but a question, you just listed some additional ones that's in addition to the 8 on this list already.
Yeah, so my 8 are ones that I absolutely expect to be on there.
Okay, great.
The 4 that I just mentioned were what I heard from you guys and from Mark.
Okay.
I love it.
Okay.
All right, anything else? All right, moving on to items from staff.
Yes, I do have a director's report, and I apologize I wasn't able to get this to you before tonight. But real quick on the new public boat launch, we as you guys know, we're undertaking an effort to locate a boat launch in or around Mole D, which is kind of near that old Samba site, soon to be a cantina. We did an RFP, we solicited firms, we got some feedback, we had a bunch of submittals, we rated those firms. We've asked questions so that they could essentially supplement those submittals, and they're in the process of answering those questions for us. We anticipate having interviews with the finalists, and there's several, in mid to late April, and we're hopeful that we can bring a finalist before City Council in May. As you guys know, once a finalist is selected, we'll bring a contract, we'll have to negotiate a contract and bring that to City Council for approval. It'll be much like the Seaside Lagoon contract. It'll be kind of a multi-year deal, several phases involved, some of which is helping us procure funding from DBA to help construct the facility, as well as design, entitlements, coastal commission review, all that good stuff. One of the first efforts that they're going to be undertaking is the necessary studies to see what is possible out there. The parking study, the demand study, and the circulation study. Obviously, big trucks are coming with long trailers, turnaround areas. We're going to lose parking for that kind of stuff. The launch itself requires additional parking. Where do we come up with that? It's really going to dictate what this thing looks like. So we're hopefully get that thing kicking here pretty soon. Switching over to the dredging project, we did hit a little bit of a snag. We were right on track, right on schedule, and sometime in late March, the barge with the generator failed on the barge. Very unfortunate. They actually had to rent a generator just to get the barge off-site so they could repair it. We're getting a new barge coming from Northern California. That was supposed to be here this Friday. That's hit a delay. We don't actually have a specified time. This was this week that we found out about this additional delay to the delay. There is about 3 weeks of work left. We've already had to work around the King Harbor Yacht Club opening day. We're likely going to have to work around beach life at this point. But we'll make it work. We'll figure it out.
Do we know what the new equipment is? Is it bigger, smaller, or is even that unidentified?
I do not know that information.
Because it seems, again, you hear things in the harbor, second, third hand. It seemed like the old barge was too small to do all the work needed in the South Channel. It did that work, but it left some sand there. Maybe it collapses into the pit, maybe not. Maybe they should go back. And then at the north end where the yacht club is, we need the smallest possible equipment to sneak between the pilings. So we're kind of in an inverse Goldilocks situation where, we'll see what comes and if it can do both ends of the harbor that it needs to do.
Yeah.
So, we're really curious about that.
I mean, I can even ask Public Works, the project manager over there and see if she knows, but.
I will definitely say, and I can dig up pictures to prove this, there's more sand than there was in the fall. And at the King Harbor westernmost docks along those pilings, the west half of those docks used to be usable by a small boat. It barely is now. There's more sand from these winter storms there. So that the need up in that section is greater than ever, unfortunately.
Understood.
So we should fix the break wall too. Which I don't want to make an inside joke for anybody listening. That's coming this summer. So.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Have we received any consideration from the company we hired to do this?
Compensation for the delay or
Some sort of consideration in the fact that we pay them for a service and now plan A broke, plan B broke. How many plans do we have until they, give us something back?
Right. I don't know that answer. There's probably some contingencies in the contract itself that kind of speaks to this kind of stuff. Failure of delivery, essentially. It is kind of a pay-as-you-go situation. We didn't give them a lump sum and said, there you go, now go do it. It's an invoice situation. So as they wait, they're not being paid.
I imagine there's some sort of time is of the essence clause in there.
Exactly.
Which this would.
You would imagine they're missing their mark no matter what. Most of these contracts have a, not to exceed amount and not to extend beyond, right? So do we need to adjust that at this point? What are the consequences? I can get that information and maybe follow up with you.
I
Well,
appreciate it.
we're set to lose quite a bit from the moorings for beach life, are we not?
I'm sorry. I'm not
Lose
following.
income from the moorings for beach life
Well,
festival?
he pays into that. He pays per mooring. I mean, he uses all of them, but
But if they're not
But
available.
if they're not available, we stand to lose quite a bit.
that's true, yeah. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
International Boardwalk Pavers, City Manager Wazansky actually hinted at this. We got some great news. As you guys know, we did our initial bid and we expected this contract to be somewhere in the $1.3 million range. The only bid that came in was like double that, and we were just floored. So we rejected the bid, went out, re-advertised at some other areas, trying to, target some different clientele, if you will. And we got a few bids and they're all right where we expected it to be initially. We're going to go ahead and move forward. Public Works is selecting that engineer or that contractor. They're going to report to council on the 23rd to award the contract. And then in May, they'll actually have the contract to approve. Obviously, we want to avoid the summer months when it comes to this pavers. We want to keep international boardwalk businesses open during their busy time. So we're targeting September to start that work. And it is about a 60-day project. And it'll kind of morph around. You'll see construction fencing probably moving quite a bit out there when it starts. But that's good news because for a while it was bad news.
First company that was really expensive, was it a misunderstanding of what we wanted? Was it the?
No. I think they understood that they were the only bid at the time.
Greedy.
That's my inclination. Mark Hansen actually went over this, but the King Harbor Yacht Club had their grand opening, and the Port Royal will do the same on April 20th. And I'll touch on the Harbor Commission purview. 2 months ago, you guys reviewed this. Do we want to expand our entitlement purview beyond the harbor and into that kind of AES site and those sites adjacent that come to a point at Pacific Avenue? This group supported it, came up with a second recommendation to also include the two parks, Zuliger and Veterans. We took it to Planning Commission last month. More of a vigorous discussion on the topic, if you will. Mio and I were dodging bullets. But after a long talk and not unanimous, they ended up supporting the inclusion of that whole triangle area into your purview. However, in that proposed expanded area, they wanted to retain ultimate authority over conditional use permits. So their recommendation was yes to the expansion, yes to allowing you guys to dictate design reviews, variances, other specified entitlements, but they would retain conditional use permits. And they unanimously denied, their recommendation was to not include the parks as well. So we'll be going to City Council next week on Tuesday. Not tomorrow, but the following week on the 16th. And we'll be going to council with both those recommendations. Your full recommendation, including the parks, and then the Planning Commission's recommendation.
So
which is a little
essentially,
altered.
we're going to be partners.
If council agrees with Planning Commission, but they could agree with you,
Okay,
right?
all right.
Would it be helpful if one or two of us showed up to pitch it to the city council? Is that a
It would
thing?
help to have your presence there. I don't know how much of a pitch you could do. You'd be subject to the 3 minutes that everybody else is subjected to. Mio's going to do a pretty good job of, itemizing our arguments for. I'll be there to support her. Obviously, we have Jim Light as the mayor now. He'll be there, who was on this commission when this idea was born. I'm not, indicating how I think this thing's going to go, but but I do think it helps to have a member of the commission there.
Okay.
And that concludes my report. I will say that our next meeting is scheduled for May 13th. We do have stuff slated for that agenda. Obviously, we're going to have the police department come and do their stats. We have the Gateway Coastal Development Permit application. That is a new art installation at the Gateway Parquet, which is on Redondo and Harbor. It's less about the design and more about the exemption to the coastal permit in terms of the impacts to the coast. But you'll get to see the design and the artist will be there and all that good stuff. So with that, if you guys know you're not going to be there, now's the time to indicate as much, because we do need a quorum for this next meeting. That's it.
Okay. All right. We're to commission. Does anybody have any questions for the director on his report? Mark Hansen from the audience.
Harbor Commissioner, City Staff, Mark Hansen, King Harbor Boater. When we had, I'm subject to the dredging, when we had the dredging contractor down there, we opened up the club for them to use the restrooms, and I brought them donuts. So we rolled out the red carpet. One of the interesting discussions at that time was the distance between the pilings, as Commissioner Carlson referenced, and we actually happened to have a 100-foot tape measure, and so we were out there measuring it, and it was sounding really tight. We were measuring about 60 feet, and they were saying, well, our small barge, the Vulcan, is about 60 feet wide, and the bigger barge is maybe 64 feet, so there was talk at that time about that the Vulcan needed to be up in Alaska eventually for something, and so that maybe they should do the north end while they had the narrow one there. It ended up, I don't know why it didn't go that way, but it did not. Okay, so they didn't get up to that area before the barge had to leave with the bad generator. I actually just informally chatted with the city engineer. I says, hey, did they figure out, whether that barge is going to fit? I remember one of them said we may have to grease the barge, and he assured me that the city really shouldn't get into that level of how they do the job. They simply have a contract, and they have to figure out how to get in there and get it done. So he didn't seem overly concerned with this particular issue, but I'm still a little nervous about the fact that, we were measuring and they're talking about inches here. The other thing I wanted to touch on now that we got to, and thank you very much for giving us a little bit of overview on that, the Planning Commission feelings on that. To the degree that I could listen to it, one of the strange things that I'll share with you, and if you haven't seen it or get a chance to watch the tape, was some of the planning commissioners had this very interesting way of talking about the AES property and says, well, we want to make sure the harbor isn't dumping a bunch of stuff there. And I found that to be a very interesting word. I was trying to understand, what did they mean by this? And they never really made it clear, although at one point, one of them seemed to think it was almost like the dry boat storage, that we've talked about, that you guys have a subcommittee on, that might be dumping things. So, but I couldn't figure out what they wanted there instead of harbor things, but I just wanted to kind of forewarn you that, one or two of them seem to have this idea that, well, you guys were gonna dump, some ugly harbor-related stuff there, and I don't know what it was that they wanted instead. So I just kind of wanted to share that with you for any of you who end up, chatting cross-commission with them. Thanks.
Thanks, Mark. Anybody else have anything for the director on his report? Okay, we're at commission items and referrals to staff. And let's start down here.
I have nothing.
You have nothing. Anything you want to ask? I have nothing at this time.
I also have nothing at this time.
I have a couple things, and last month I did them under director's report, so this month I'll do them under this section. I'm on Ted Lieu's email list, our congressman, and on Friday he published a list of funding he's gotten for infrastructure for local cities, and in there was $1.5 million for the Redondo Beach Marina dock system replacement. Yep. Is that South Basin docks? Does that include pavers, or?
That is.
Know any more about that?
Yes, so we actually applied for it and got it awarded. It is for the reconstruction of Basin 3, the slips and the dock system itself. Obviously, that's not going to replace all of it, but it certainly will do quite a bit. We're ecstatic that we got awarded. We actually thought we were only going to get $800,000, and then when it was finally awarded, they told us it was actually closer to 1.4. So a huge, great surprise. one, that we got it, two, that was more than we actually anticipated. But yeah, we're really excited about it. We're looking at next steps. This is real recent news, probably within the last month. There's usually coordination with the state regarding next steps, and they haven't revealed those details just yet in terms of what we have to do. For sure, we have to go to city council and get a resolution together that formally accepts the money. That's usually step number one. But then there's usually and each grant's different, but there's a few follow-ups before you actually receive the money.
Second question I had was, Jim Light was on some subcommittees. I'm not sure of all of them, but do we need to, re-volunteer somebody to?
Yeah, I think we should probably agendize a topic in the near future where we list out the vacancies that he left on all the subcommittees, and review who would want to fill in his stead. You don't have to. You may not come up with a decision on a particular subcommittee, and you think that whoever's left can do the job, but we can kind of go line by line and figure out if you want to replace him or if you don't. But I think that's a great idea for the May agenda.
Yeah,
Now that we have our replacement.
Yes.
This is something I was thinking about doing last month, but it didn't make sense. Do we have any subcommittees coming up in the next month? Do we hit this issue at all?
I believe we would have the Seaside Lagoon potentially.
Okay.
We can talk about it, but in May, but I think that might be one where we want to leave open, but maybe not. We're so far along on that one.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. Next month.
Yep.
And the last one I have is, I alluded to this when Division Chief May was here, unregistered boats and empty slips.
Yeah.
Do you have the spreadsheet I sent, or?
I do. We printed off copies.
So the first thing I'd like to do is ask the commission to receive and file this so that you can look at this. Can I make a motion, or do you have
Make the
to?
motion.
I'd like to make a motion that we receive and file this thing I did.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Any objections? Okay, so moved. Let's go.
So I've been meaning to do this because you always hear, oh, the harbor's full. Our slips are full. There's a waiting list for everything. And I walked around one of the 4 marinas, and I'd like to do the other 3. And I'm not sure what to do with this data, but I found a lot of empty slips, and I found a lot of unregistered boats. And, if you were to walk down your street and see empty houses or unregistered cars, or if you were to go to our property manager and go up to, Redondo Landing and discover that what you thought was a bunch of rented buildings were, buildings in disrepair or not actually being used, you'd try to do better. Mm-hmm. So, looking at the data, I probably missed something. It's impossible to count this perfectly. But I walked around, and any boat that I had no CF number on it, I said, that boat's documented. There's a chance that boat's completely unregistered, and there were some, 20, 25 footers, which are probably more likely unregistered than undocumented.
They
But
wouldn't be documented.
there you go.
They're too small.
So I probably saw some that were too small that had no number on it. And then anything that did have a number, I wrote down the number. I found a couple fun ones. I found one that had an Arizona registration lettering and a California year sticker on it. It was a 25. So that's good. There was one Florida boat with no registration number. The oldest thing I found was a 2003. So I counted 787 total slips. I counted 104 of them as empty. I counted 683 boats in slips. And obviously, there's boats out for service. The boats actually get used. There's reasons for boats to be out. Some of them, it's hard to make a judgment. Sometimes there's a little dinghy in a bigger slip. The guy that cleans the bottom of the boats is, parking his tender in some empty slip somewhere. But I found 104 empty slips, so I found 13.2% empty slips. Far from what we hear about the harbor's full. There's a waiting list. We ought to dredge the AES plant and turn that into a new harbor. And then I found, let's give people the benefit of the doubt. Let's say a 23 registration sticker is good. Boat registrations go for 2 years. So by now, April, hopefully with the storms and stuff, you've been down to your boat and you've found a moment to put the 2025 registration sticker on it. But let's give people the benefit of the doubt. And let's call anything that's documented, which may be too small, or 2025 or 2023 registered. Let's say they're all good. I found 559 of those. Older than 2023, I found 124. So I found, roughly 80% registered, roughly 20% not registered. And if you add up the empty and not registered, I get about 30% of the harbor. Again, far away from the harbor's full, there's a waiting list, go down to Cabrillo. I don't know what to do with this data. I don't know who enforces this stuff. I don't know who writes the
In the old
ticket.
days, the marina did.
Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely correct. I mean, the way our master leaseholds are written and agreed upon is that our master leaseholders, Kevin Ketchum with Port Royal, the Basin One operators, we put that onus on them. Now, I have come to be educated on this topic fairly quickly over the last year. One of council's priorities was that Basin 3 get cleaned up, and the priority was emphasized on Basin 3 because that's the one basin that the city actually regulates. We actually operate that one. We have a property management group that does it. It's simple in terms of, hey, these are month-to-month leases essentially. We can break the lease whenever we want. It's not any kind of like 5-year deal. We don't have to have cause to get rid of the boats or to negate the lease. But we noticed the same thing. I mean, I think it was like 30% looked like it was unregistered or dilapidated, or you could call it abandoned. But what I learned was if it's in a slip, it's not technically abandoned. You can't legally call it abandoned. But what you can do is go through the California vessel department in the DMV and go through a very lengthy process to determine that it is in fact abandoned, even though it's in the slip. And then once you get that determination, you can get rid of the boat. You can scrap it essentially, but you almost have to like prove that it's abandoned, take ownership of it. Lots of paperwork, lots of time, gives the potential owner a bevy of options to get out of it at any point. But we're undertaking that process now in Basin 3. We've gotten rid of 3 boats already. One was surrendered to us. That's the easiest way, where the owner actually says, you know what, take it. They're just out. That's kind of a rare thing. And we're in the process of doing 3 more, where it's in the slip. We have no communication with them. They pay their bills on time. What we're finding out is that a lot of people get these boats bequeathed to them and have no idea. And there's maybe a trust fund that actually pays the slip rental fee every month. They have no idea. So they're not technically behind on rent, but nobody uses it and it looks bad, right? It's not taken care of. So that would be one of those, let's prove that it's abandoned and then cancel the contract and get rid of the boat, right? So it's a long process. Port Royal's really good at staying on top of this stuff. I think it might be time for me to reach out to the Basin One operator, the King Harbor Marina operator, remind them of what their duties are.
In the contract, I've had boats in Basin One since the 70s. And in the contract, you will have a current registration, you will have current liability insurance, and if there's any change in address, you have to keep in contact and let them know your current billing information. And every year they checked, and every year if you didn't have your insurance and you didn't have your registration, you got a notice.
Yep.
And it isn't that way anymore.
It's not,
Of course, we also don't have any security in the harbor.
We've got clauses now. We ended up updating our agreements in Basin 3. And because they're month to month, you can pretty much make changes, get it approved by council. And then if you want to stay there, you've got to sign this new agreement because it's a month to month contract essentially. We added an additional clause that it's got to be working. It's got to be an operable vessel and they've got to prove it.
That was also in our contract, that it had to be operable on its own accord, not towing, but it actually had to be able to move on its own.
Because this isn't boat storage. Slips aren't boat storage where you can just leave them there and forget about them. It's It's a little different than that, right?
So we can't do,
Right.
we can't do too much with this tonight because it's not agendized. And I'm not even sure what to do with this. I mean, I wish we had a full harbor that was, where
Yeah.
boats were getting used.
I mean, what I'm hearing is I think it's direction to me to go reach out to the Basin One master leaseholder, reestablish some expectations, and potentially report back to you guys on progress.
Okay, that sounds good to me. And you can use this.
As a starting
Thanks.
point.
Yeah, and I've also learned that the next time a boat gets loose, I'm not tying it up again,
Right.
unfortunately. So
You could have saved another boat, though.
I saved my buddies. We were on it. We hit it. We had to get back to our slip and it was in the way.
Yeah,
It had drifted out into the fairway.
you're gonna go to heaven for it.
All right, any other directions to staff?
I have nothing else. Thanks a lot.
Tom?
No, nothing for me.
Nor I. With that, do we have a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
See you next month.
All right.